I'm Fabien. I'm not Nick again. What I do, basically, I work for the Innovation Department of the European Parliament. I hope you know the European Parliament. What you don't expect is that a big institution like this has an innovation lab. Basically, we try things. So one of the things I wanted to try this morning was to put on the physics blade the detail of the speakers with the bio, the photo, and everything. But because I'm a prototypist, I build stuff that quite often don't work. And this morning, of course, connection stuff, unexpected things, well, it didn't work. So yeah, if you want to know also a bit more after on what the European Parliament is doing in terms of VR, AR, emerging technologies, I'm here. I also work for UNICEF. So UNICEF, most people, I hope everybody knows what UNICEF is and does. What few people know, or very few people, in fact, is that UNICEF has an innovation fund. The idea is that investing in startups, instead of trying to fix every problem ourselves, is not necessarily the best solution because we don't necessarily have the expertise, the cultural knowledge on the ground. So the idea is that we give $100,000 to startup from emerging country, no equity. So if you mess it up, if it doesn't work, there is no risk involved. There is a selection process, so it has to be emerging technology, VR and AR in particular, and it has to be aligned with UNICEF mission, which is to help children worldwide. So again, if you know somebody who has a startup in a developing country that is aligned with UNICEF mission, please do come say hi. Also, we're looking for better contact with DC funds in the Bay, so that we can bridge the gap after the end of the 1-year support with 100K. And what I also do on my spare time is I'm a Mozilla contributor. I got stickers there. There is a new browser that you might not know called Firefox Reality that runs on the Quest, that also starts to run on the, what I usually wear. Yeah, the Magic Leap. So I'm pretty much on every new VR and AR devices. So now that you know a little bit who I am and who I'm not, then if you can understand better what you want to see. So I'll skip this because you all know what VR is, why it's exciting. Yes. Why I contribute a little bit also more in depth to Mozilla. So I don't know if you've read this book. It's a thick book, 600 pages, but I think it's pretty interesting, pretty exciting, which is basically on how some companies make money by selling advertisement, which is goal is basically to modify our behavior. And I think that helps a lot to shed light on why some large companies are investing in VR and AR hardware. So I think it's a very interesting framework, and that's also why I believe contributions to open source and free software is important. So that's why I contribute to Mozilla, not just because I really believe that the web is the platform, but again, because we need to be able to change whatever we want, especially we don't want the hardware to be doing things we don't expect it to do. So I'll skip this part. As you might have guessed by now, some of the stuff was not really for here today. So if you, who heard actually before, who heard about the WebVR specification? Show of hands. Okay. Who heard about the WebXR specification? Show of hands. Okay, and who developed for it? Okay, cool. So it's still work in progress. One of the value directly before the specs are implemented everywhere is that your content runs on pretty much every or any device. That's the proposal of running AR on the web. Is that if you can make it, if your design is interesting enough to make it work across the different platform, you can get the right UX, then it works pretty much everywhere and anywhere. Being on high-end device, like a Magic Leap, or on low-end device, like a smartphone, as long as they use a camera, you can overlay on it, and if you can get, with the different capability of the device, scaling up the quality of the content. And yes, because you're using, how do you say, existing specification, where you're relying on W3C and years, decades even of experience, then you can use existing APIs. So for example, when you have your Magic Leap controller and you want to interact with the content, that's actually a controller. I don't know if you tried to play with a gamepad on the web, so you can plug your controller and just press the button and the web page will react to it. So instead of having a controller for your console, then you will have, let's say, the Magic Leap controller or whatever other AR devices you want to. We'll skip. And yes, also, so the next slide, if you're epileptic, close your eyes. But some of the beauty of the web is that it's a lot more powerful than most of us ever know. You can have, for example, I was in Ghana and Nigeria for UNICEF in February, and one of the difficulty is the connection is not that good. So one of the problem of the web is that if you don't have a connection at all, well, you're basically screwed. If you have a little bit of connection and it gets cut, you can at least download on the device your content. So web doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have it only online. It can be, but once you've loaded the page once, then at least you can store on the device and then run it wherever you want. You go under a tunnel, you go in connection because there are too many people in a conference trying to hit the network. That does happen. Then at least you're safe because you'll be able to have some cache content. So if you are not a web developer, just don't be afraid of being online. As long as you can get one version on the device, you're safe. Meaning it's not magic. The same way you cannot have an app if you don't have access to the App Store and download it. But once you have it, you're good to go. And then you have some specific features. For example, in WebVR, then you can go from one page to another without leaving the headset. So if that's your page and that's somebody else's page, you can directly jump in there. So I'm glad nobody was epileptic there. And yes, one of the important part, one of the questions I will know somebody is going to ask at the end of the presentation is, that's cool, but web is not performant. I want the latest Unreal Engine graphics, I want the best shader. And that's true that if you are a state-of-the-art game developer and you compare side-by-side web and native, you're going to notice a difference. But I take a bet. If you want, we go outside of the conference. I'm betting a bottle of champagne. I have one in my room ready for this. If we take a random passerby, not a game developer, and he or she can distinguish if it's based on the web or native, well, the bottle is for you. You can share with the passerby, but so take me on that bet later. Why does it work actually? Why does it work relatively well on the web in terms of performance? Is because we use WebGL. WebGL allows us to go as low as we can go, so you can program using shaders and have some pretty amazing effects. It's a bit trickier, of course, but you can go all the way down, basically. So one of the ways developed on the web and it's delivered on the web is using Firefox Reality. That's one example of a browser. Yes, I got some stickers in there, but the beauty, of course, is you can see how it's done. It's all open source. You can contribute back to it. It's a bit tricky, but of course you're welcome to it. This I'll skip. There are some interesting also in VR discussions about it. So I don't know, anybody knows ExoKit? Oh, okay, cool. So ExoKit is another browser that's running on Magic Leap. So let's imagine you start to make your AR web page with some content placed in space. It's a little bit crazy bet. ExoKit, the idea is not, oh, let's take an existing browser like Firefox or Chrome and add WebXR to it. The idea is let's remove everything. The thing that matters now is not 2D browsing, it's spatial computing. So it's being able to go through the space. And for that, we don't necessarily need the whole complexity of a CSS rendering engine. I don't know if you worked with this, but it's difficult. I'm not going to swear. It's very complicated. So ExoKit is just starting with, pose and being able to see in space and have the sensors on it. So that makes it a lot leaner. So you're not going to read the source code in 5 minutes, but that makes it a lot also hackable. So you can rebuild basically your own ExoKit instance or use it as a browser if you prefer that. And it's all open source too. So why do I think also really AR has its place on the web? Is because right now, let's be honest, there is a lot of hype around AR. And that means people get excited by it. And that means if you have to install an app, you're going to do it because you get some exciting new content, something you've never seen before. And if you've never seen it, you'll get ready to go through hoops for that. But it also means that as you do it once, twice, maybe 10 times, then you start to get less excited. It's not that exciting anymore to spend 10 minutes to install an app. You're going to use 2 minutes, at least not to me. And I think that's the more we go through VR, AR experiences, the more this happens, and the worse it gets. And I think a lot of it, I mean, if you're some of the top, if you're Facebook or Google, then you're going to manage to get people to install your app. If you're anybody else, good luck. It's really difficult. So you'll have to fight for it. And a lot of those apps also, they're really, I like to think of bite-size apps that you don't use them for an hour. It's not, I don't know, Autodesk or it's not Blender, so you don't spend hours on end on it. You spend a couple of minutes here or there. So again, if you literally spend 10 minutes to use an app, 2 minutes, that works at the beginning, but quickly it fades away. So the definition of WebAR, it started in 2011 by Blair McIntyre, now at Mozilla, who's then a professor at Georgia Tech in AR. And the idea is basically you put layers on top of reality. So it's working pretty much everywhere, anywhere, as long as you got a camera. That's the basis, of course. If you don't have a camera, that's going to be difficult, or a path-through, as was explained in the previous presentation. And in terms of support, it really depends. So it's, I say all-ish, because if you want just to overlay on top of a camera, then it works literally anywhere. But if you want to have, let's say, Magic Leap with its latest, let's say, eye tracking, then you need some experimental browser. You might have to compile it yourself, or you might have to get a bit more hackish. One really good example, I think the nicest example to get started, if you have an iPhone, is the Mozilla XR Viewer. So it's an experimental browser, meaning you don't have it installed by default on your phone. But then you have access to pose, you have everything you would expect to add. You also have face tracking, you also have, so I'll do a little bit at the, no, today I don't have, yeah, during lunch, if you want to play with this, we can have a go at it. I did some little examples with it. It's really, one of the beauty I have with this is to get started and to learn. So if you want to teach AR to someone, anybody working in Unity in the room? For Unity? For Unity? Okay, so then I can be a little bit rough. When I go to workshops, I mean, Unity is an amazing tool. If you're already working with Unity, yeah, you live in Unity, so that makes a lot of sense. But when you're starting, so I really, let me backtrack just a bit. I think VR and AR are really exciting technology. I think this is like the new way to consume and navigate through the world, to consume information and navigate through the world. But I think it's a little bit scary. Like if I put my physics on my face or my Magic Leap, then I think people should freak out a little bit. Because they don't know how it's working, because I look dorky, okay, got you that. But also because it's kind of strange. And I think it's not strange when you can tear it apart, or at least intellectually tear it apart and understand how it's working. And that's the beauty of having something running in the browser. It means I can literally start a workshop with you right now, and it would work in minutes. I've already done the test, people challenge me on this. Whereas if you start to install the whole tool chain, let's say Unity, we're all on the same network, then by the end of the hour, maybe 2 of you will have managed to install the tool. And it's so freaking boring to see the install bar there. No, you want to test right now how it's working. What is this new feature? You want to stay excited about the new technology. So I think beside the whole deployment I mentioned during the first part, one part is really how quickly you can get started so that you can help others to build their content and how, yes, you can share that content. Also, yeah, the beauty is I'm based in Brussels in Belgium. We did the W3C workshop on content creation a year and a half ago already, I think. And then somebody did some WebAR content, and she just shared me a link, like on Telegram. She shared me the link, and I opened it in my browser, and that's it. Like, we didn't have to go through an app store. I didn't have to look what was the name of her app. I didn't have to build and sign something that was really somebody I did not know before. She was super excited of sharing me her content. I was super excited because usually, yeah, there are not so many AR experience in general, but WebAR in particular, and that took literally a second. So there is beauty in delivery, but also in learning and starting to use it. Yeah, the magic is there is not a lot of magic. How many people know 3GS? Show of hands. Okay, a couple. So that's one way. If you don't want to write shaders or GLSL, which is the low-level version, what your graphic card, your GPU is going to eat to crunch, then 3GS makes it at a higher level. And for example, the typical app, AR app that goes, let's say, measure from point A to point B on the wall, that's about one line. You get point A, which is, for example, where you are or where the user pointed, and then you throw a hit test vector on it, then you get back the distance between those 2 points. So you have really high-level function that helps you to do this a lot more efficiently. So I will try to get this. Yeah, so those are some examples of what can be done right now. So obviously putting a 3D object in space. So just my better half hates this when I do presentation and I show cubes, but imagine a Game of Thrones dragon. It doesn't have to be a cube. You can put any kind of asset, can be animated, can have a PBR, can be as cute or scary as you want it. But the cube as a way to technically see where it is, what it does, a lot more interesting, a lot easier. So yeah, for example, the typical boombox from GLTF, some reticle examples, so completely doing the hit test and then going over the floor. I said I would touch a little bit on the light aspect, but that's really one line. For example, yes, you can measure light and adapt the shadow of the reticle. Some simple computer vision. We were discussing before on the previous presentation on face detection and recognition, so that's also implemented. And then, yeah, the typical use case that you see of image detection. You don't want your IRQ marker. You don't want some black and white squares. Then you can also use basically whatever to the image to overlay content on top of it. And then pretty exciting and super new is, of course, map sharing. I don't know if some of you heard about the Open AR Cloud. There was a symposium yesterday at Ericsson, just down the street. It's basically how, let's imagine you map the space. Well, I don't want to map it again. I want to be able to use your mapping of the space to add my content, or I want to be able to merge those content. So we can now share, to build those maps and share them. So that's a really efficient way to do it. And again, it's built on the web. The tool or the infrastructure in order to share and deliver content efficiently. So that's decades again on a specification that was agreed different multiple browser vendors. So yes, a bunch of experimentation, some state-of-the-art. So that's Pathfinder is the CSS library from Firefox that's running on Magic Leap. I don't have it. I don't have a Magic Leap with me, but I can send you the link if you want to try it. And Servo. So that's the new 2D engine based on Rust, and it's being ported now to 3D. Some silly tricks, that's how I prototype. I say I'm a prototypist, so that's how I draft my AR content. I got a Tupperware, and then I start to imitate what I'm going to do, let's say, with the app. And yes, a little bit on the specification. So that's the beauty of it, let's say, is if you are a manufacturer, so that's why I was insisting a little bit during the previous talk on how the web part was supported in the classes. Bless you. You just have to support the specification, and then the content that I will build for my platform will instantly, assuming eventually that I've done it right, work on your platform. It's pretty important because if you're a hardware manufacturer, you are craving for content. If you start a new platform and there is no content on it, nobody's going to buy your hardware. If you support specification, so for example, the Quest was released, a week ago? Not everything, but a lot of the WebXR content or WebVR content was running on it the same day. It was not customized for it. There was some little glitch eventually because the controller have some, how do you say, a capacitive touch, which is not just one click, but based on the distance, some intensity. So that had to be adapted, but basically your old content will run on the new hardware. And a bit also on privacy. The beauty of making it accessible to everybody and anybody faster also means that users have to be not just educated, but at least given the opportunity to learn what the software and hardware is going to impact their life. So first disclosure, knowing what the app is going to take in terms of information, and then making it understandable, and eventually getting consent, and then actually getting those exciting functionalities, but not before. Because yeah, there is a risk otherwise. Yes, this is not. I'll put the slide on the website at some point, but that's it. So, thank you.